Hello again, and welcome back to this deep dive course into the Healing Light Tarot. And once again, I'm with Ben.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start today. We are going to start the beginning of our journey through the cards, aren't we?
Yeah.
One by one.
Yeah,
so with the major
absolutely.
arcana. So
And we're starting with the Fool through to
we'll start with the Fool
Chariot, aren't we?
through to the Chariot. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
so let's jump
Go for
straight in. So we've got the Fool card. So this is the Fool card of the Healing Light Tarot. And Chris, talk to us about, the creative process of this, how you got to this image, what inspired you.
Okay. It's a combination of things, but actually there's a lot of inspiration from classic decks in there for me.
Okay.
Which I'll come to. I mean, first and foremost, I love the Waite-Smith Fool. And of course, you've got the Fool about to step off the edge of the cliff, almost unaware, being chased by the dog.
Whereas in yours, we've got it completely jumping off.
He's leaping, yeah. And I wanted something a little bit more deliberate because sort of the earliest decks that I saw, Waite's Fool is sort of quite romanticised, and it's wonderful. Don't get me wrong, there's a huge amount of symbolism in here.
Yeah.
But one thing I think doesn't come over as strongly in here is the fact that in a lot of the early decks, the Fool was a court jester.
Yeah.
And the court jester is a very subversive, very rebellious figure.
Mm.
So I kind of wanted a sense of that rebelliousness. And this one is based on, here's my inspirations. There's the Fool cards through two of my earliest decks. You've got the Swiss one JJ and this one, which is just one of my all-time favourites. This was the deck that I discovered the tarot through.
And tell us what deck that is.
So this is Fergus Hall's, it's now published as Fergus Hall's Tarot of the Witches by US Games. This early edition is the James Bond 007 Tarot, which you can see. This was the deck that was featured in the James Bond film Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, the colours in my Fool card are a direct homage to these two. The yellows, the reds and the blues. So I have obviously been working in silhouettes with this. So, I couldn't sort of pay homage to the costume in the way that, you see on those two cards. But I thought I'm just going to make the overall colour scheme for this sort of quite electric reds, yellows and blues. And it kind of gives it that bit of anarchy that I love.
Yeah.
So I was also interested in showing kind of what happens after the Fool's gone off the edge of the cliff. In this case, he's leapt, he's taken a leap. The dog is kind of leaping with him. But I've shown on here, he's leaping over an ocean. There's an ocean at the foot of the cliff. And that for me, when you take a leap, when, the new beginning of the Fool, it's something that when I did the Quantum Tarot with Kay Stopforth, she equated the leap of the Fool to the Big Bang and the creation of the universe, the beginning of everything. And you're stepping out into the unknown. So I kind of wanted this ocean, which represents the unconscious, the unknown. It's liminal space. It's the time between times that we've talked about in in the last talk we did. That Celtic term for the dusk or the dawn. We don't know which this is. For me personally, this is a sunrise. And
Chris, talking of this area of the sunrise, I see that you've got the mandorla here.
Yeah.
With actually in the middle of the sunrise there.
It's framing the sunrise.
So what's that? Why have you put that there?
Now for me, dusk dawn is a healing time, and it's also a time where the veil between the spiritual world and the physical world is at its thinnest. So it's a time for insights, it's a time for divination, it's a time for communing with with the divine. So for me, it's a very healing time. So the rising of the sun over the mountains here, that mirrors the new beginning of the Fool for me. So that's why I wanted to show, each time I put a mandorla on one of these cards, it basically denotes where the healing lesson, the healing properties, the healing qualities of each archetype, where they are. Now for me, it is in that new beginning. So The sunrise very much mirrors the leap of the fool.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
For good or for ill. So yeah, the sun shining through the healing portal of the mandala.
Yeah.
That's where the healing power of this card is for me. It's in beginnings. It's in new beginnings. In risk taking. In taking the leap.
And we mentioned yesterday that this mandala is on every card, isn't it?
It's on every card. I've put one where I feel the healing focus of the card is.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's in the new beginning, in the sunrise. There are two exceptions which we'll come to.
Yeah.
There is a mandala on those cards, but the rules are broken, and when you get to them, you'll understand why. But generally, it's to actually focus you in on where the healing lesson of that image is. So for me, the sunrise is the beginning. It's the leap of the fool.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of a new day.
Yeah.
You know, it's the end of an old day, the beginning of a new, you know, of night. It could be either, whichever you feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that tipping point.
Yeah.
And again, you know, sunrise, dawn, halfway point between day and night.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of, that's where revelations come. So,
And I love how you've pulled a lot of inspiration from other decks that you've used throughout your time.
Yeah.
And I know the next card we're going to look at, which is the Magician card.
yes.
You have also pulled inspiration from decks, haven't you?
Yeah.
Other decks.
This is my inspiration with this one. Actually, this time comes from the Crowley Thoth deck, but not from where you would think. I was inspired by the Magician, but not the standard one that we see. Now, I have a copy that was bought in, I think it was 2009.
Yeah.
And at that stage, you could buy a copy of the Thoth that had 2 extra cards, both of which were Magician designs that Crowley had rejected.
Yeah.
I think
There was a few.
There was a few. He was a bit ghastly. He made her paint it 6 times
Poor woman.
before he thought she got it right. But one of the designs really inspired me because there it is. This is the one. This is one that didn't make the cut, and I was fascinated by this multi-limbed magician.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, he's got 6 arms.
Yeah.
But for me, I just envisaged similarly multi-limbed, but 4 arms, and each holding one of the 4 symbols of ritual magic that you see. Let me just show you. We see this on the Waitsmith deck. You know, they're on the table, the 4 symbols of ritual magic representing the 4 elements, and there also are 4 suit symbols from the minor arcana. So you've got the pentacle, the sword, the wand, and the cup. Now, for me, again, I liked the idea of my magician wielding all 4 of those at the same time.
Yeah.
Because for me, with this card, the magician is in control of all of those 4 elements.
Yeah.
You know, he's actually holding them, he's manipulating them, he's channeling through them.
Yeah.
So I've also, I mean, one thing you will notice that I started off, when I first started this magician card, I kind of wanted to sort of follow the Waitsmith and the colour scheme, and it was just not working, and the card wouldn't come together, and I just sensed go with colours from the Thoth. So it's, I mean, it looks a little bit darker on screen than when you see it in real life, but the basic colour scheme for this is the colour scheme that you see on the Thoth card. It's blues, purples, golden yellows, but obviously mixed in with the sort of the darkness.
I've just realised as you picked that up,
Yeah.
you've also incorporated the same sort of colours from the back cross, haven't you, really?
Yeah,
Because
I hadn't
it's got
thought of that, because there is the rainbow on
the
here.
rainbow effect, yeah.
I'd got so far with this card, and I just, all of a sudden in my head, I could see him stood in the centre of a rainbow. And for me, the magician is channeling divine energy. He's drawing divine energy down from above, from the, you know, from the supernatural world into the natural world.
Yeah.
So I've shown that in 2 ways. He's obviously standing in a rainbow, you know, a descending rainbow. But also you've got the lightning coming traditionally from the top left.
Yeah.
You see with the Waitsmith, I mean, you know, the wand is in the top left. His hand is pointing down to the bottom right. So I've shown that with the direction of the lightning. There we go. that way, channeling down through my magician.
And another thing that we spoke about earlier, which you didn't notice at first, but you did when you'd done it, was the Leonardo stance.
Yeah, because it's something I didn't pick up on. And again, you do things as a creator that you do spontaneously. Yeah. I based the bottom part of his body on Leonardo's Vitruvian Man.
Yeah.
Because I was completely fixated with the arms on this. I didn't realise he only had 2 legs. But it just feels right for my magician.
Yeah.
I like that whole concept of archetypal perfection, male perfection that you see in Vitruvian Man. And as a channel of divine energy, there is a certain amount of perfection going on there as well.
Yeah.
For me, anyway. So yeah, he's got 4 arms, 4 legs, and also I have still paid homage to the Waitsmith in here because you can see the bait. There's roses and lilies. I found this really wonderful photograph. I think it was of William Morris wallpaper online. I've said to you, I'm a cut and paste kid.
Yeah.
You know, I collage.
He loves it.
I recycle. I am a bit like that. Yeah. So I put that in there because that's the sort of, I love the whole concept of passion and purity that runs through the Waitsmith time and time again, and you see on the magician, you see on the strength card, you see in quite a few other cards, maybe not so obviously. So that's in there too. But yeah, and also with the mandorla, it's a little bit more subtle here, but I pointed out to you, didn't I, a few minutes ago, the magician is actually framed within the mandorla. You can see the spheres either side of him, but actually where the oval of the mandorla, where the spheres meet, is where I've put the lemniscate. Yeah. So for me, that channeling of power that comes with the magician, that power comes from a place of the divine.
Yeah.
It is channeled through the magician.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show that power almost emerging, the magician emerging from that mandorla, and obviously that is a healing portal, but it's a portal that in theory can bring infinite healing. It's healing that we never stop tapping into through the course of our lifetime. So it was just important for me to have the infinity symbol right where those 2 spheres meet and where they cross. So that's what's going on there. And for me, he is the principle of transformation. You know, if he appears in the deck, it's how we can actually proactively take control in our lives. And change things for the better. So but again, there is a lot of my traditional favourites in there.
Influences from other decks, which is wonderful that you've done that. Which takes us on to our next card, which is the High Priestess.
Yes.
And you've used. Tell us about the colour in this one, because it's very blue, isn't it?
It's just blue, and I deliberately used a very limited colour palette here.
Yeah.
So I work in Photoshop. Anyone who works with Photoshop will know of colour gradients, and it's a way of actually imposing false colour onto an image. So that's just technically how I work. Now, with something like the Fool, it was quite a complex colour gradient because there's red, blue, yellow in there, and it basically overlays on. A colour gradient goes from black to white, and then if you put, say, red where it's black, everything that's black will turn red, everything that's grey will turn yellow, and vice, so and so. But I wanted this to be very simple because there's a sense of calmness and stillness with the High Priestess that I wanted to evoke. And also, to me, blue is the colour of water, but for me it's a very mysterious, mystical colour. Astrologically, my chart is primarily air. With water and fire. I've got very little earth and very little ground in that. That kind of says quite a lot, really, doesn't it?
I'm air as well, actually.
Yeah, so you are, aren't you? Yeah. But she represents that water space for me, the space of the intuition, the space of the heart.
You use water in this because you mentioned about waterfalls, don't you?
Everything about the High Priestess is in the realm of water for me. So a traditional High Priestess, she sits between the 2 pillars, but actually here her pillars are waterfalls, one that is in shadow, one that's in light. I've put the letters that you see on the Waite-Smith card on these pillars, just again to pay homage to the Waite-Smith, and those letters represent the pillars of the Temple of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So I've put those there to kind of draw her into tradition. She's got the sort of crown of the triple moon,
Yeah.
albeit sort of my own design for that, to show that she represents lunar phases.
Yeah.
And you're very much, it's the card of feminine cycles and ebb and flow. But ultimately for me, she's the principle of feminine spirituality.
Yeah.
So for me, masculine spirituality represents codified spirituality, tradition handed down, tradition taught, whereas feminine spirituality is very much the realm of intuitively touching the divine. And whereas masculine spirituality is the realm of codifying and passing on, it's structure,
Yeah.
whereas feminine spirituality is very much hands-on, touching the divine and experiencing the divine. And what I wanted to do here was, she's reaching up and touching a heavenly sphere. So, we often hear, in medieval tradition, you hear like the music of the spheres, the spheres of heaven, the ascending through the spheres. So I kind of wanted to connect her to that. So she's touching this ethereal sphere, and you can see the light of the moon is shining through it.
And tell us about the mandala again, because there's a specific reason it's in that area again.
She's emerging out of the mandala here. She's the mandala is almost giving birth to her. So you can see once, sphere on either side of her, and then she's emerging out of that oval space. And again, for me, it's that kind of intuitive reaching out. A lot of that, again, that was more of a sort of intuitive thing on my part rather than a reason thing. I just sensed she had to be coming out of that mandala, because actually the very action of the high priestess is something very healing for me. She's the gatekeeper of the unknown. On traditional cards we see her sat in front of a veil. My veil is very gossamer-like and misty. You can see the mist of the waterfalls forming the veil. You can see the water behind the veil again, which is very much that sort of pool of the unconscious, because she is the, on lots of levels, she's the guardian of the unconscious. But then, again, it's the gateway of the unknown, higher realities that we can't see. But I also wanted to show that she herself is a portal. On a lot of the cards I've used silhouettes. With her, it's an outline that actually looks into another world. And again, you can see that actually running through her is a waterfall.
I think it's very rich in symbolism, not just from other decks that you've got ideas from, but with your own ideas as well.
There is a lot of my own ideas in here, and this is very much how I see her. It's funny, I think she's a very aloof figure on some levels. It's easier to connect to the Empress because she's so warm. She's so human on some levels, not on others. Whereas the High Priestess, that purity, virginity, chasteness, if you go back to the sort of original archetypes of the female Pope, which is quite a subversive figure, but there is an aloofness about her, but that is what gives her the quality that actually can bless us and touch us. When we come face to face with her in a meditation or in a reading, she's kind of beckoning us through the portal, and in a way gently inviting us to go beyond the veil. She is the gatekeeper of the veil. She doesn't necessarily, sometimes we kind of go and we kind of walk towards her and she won't let us through.
Well, what I find quite interesting about this one is that, for instance, on the Waite-Smith version, you don't see the water; it's hidden behind the veil.
It's hinted at, because I mean,
it is, but yours is more inviting into that.
If you look very closely, you can see on either side of the veil between the pillars, you can actually see that ocean.
The water
you can see it behind. I wanted to actually make it quite blatant, and also show that she herself is a gateway. You look through the High Priestess to a waterfall, you know, or she's almost like a glass figure that a waterfall is flowing over.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to be very ethereal. But yeah, for me, she is very much that sort of spiritual connection archetype. She is the gatekeeper between the divine world and the real world. So for us on a practical level, it is very much about when we step into the unknown, you know.
Absolutely.
And we, you know, anytime we use our intuition or sort of dare to reach out intuitively, you know, whether that's through meditation, whether it's through divination, you're in her realm. I mean, for me, she is the priestess of divination on another level, but she's one of the most fascinating figures in the whole deck as far as I'm concerned.
Intriguing.
So there's probably more questions than there are answers in the way I've portrayed her, but that's how I really personally see her. And it's
wonderful.
possibly one of my personal favourites from the deck. So
how long did it take you to create that particular card?
That was quick. Ironically, that was she was already partially in place because some of the images in this deck actually come from unfinished projects. I started 2 tarot decks that got abandoned after I finished the Sun Tarot. And it's as if almost I wasn't ready to do another one, and almost as if I didn't at that time have anything new to say. But there were odd images that were left on file, and ironically what had happened was I created this priestess image and then gone on to rejected this and then gone on to create another one. Now the priestess shape anyway, but I realized when I look back through my files that this was what I wanted to say. And I'd have this concept of the priestess reaching up and touching you know, a heavenly sphere. So I basically imported her into the image, and once she was in there and I knew that I wanted to use waterfalls for the pillars, that was when she came to life. And funnily enough, a couple of hours to put that together.
Wow.
But because she was kind of partially pre-existent. So
fantastic.
And interestingly, the next card we're going to look at, the Empress, is similar because this was, here she is. Again, the figure from the Empress card, I'd already created her. But I'd started a black and white deck with, it was a collaboration that we tried and it didn't work, and we wanted to create a deck that was based on film noir. So I'd created this figure of the Empress, you know, holding aloft the Venus symbol and the shield.
Did you draw inspiration from other decks for this particular?
There's all sorts in here. There is a bit of Thoth in there, which I will just show you. You can see one of the things I love about the Thoth is I love the colours. I love the greens and the pinks. So the colour on my Empress was primarily inspired by this. But you can see she sits between 2 moons, which are both within a wide sphere. Now they touch on the Thoth Empress, and I immediately thought, they're going to overlap and become the mandala in mine. So that's my Thoth inspiration. There is a lot of Marseille inspiration in here as well, because the shield that she's holding, you often see the traditional Marseille Empress with a shield emblazoned with an eagle, and of course that's it's a symbol of authority. But then I've also drawn inspiration from the Waite-Smith, because the shield on the Waite-Smith has the symbol of Venus. You know, so I wanted to triumphantly holding aloft the symbol of Venus. You know, so, but then the rest of it, and of course she's got the crown of 12 stars. So the 12 stars of the zodiac that you see in the Waite-Smith, basically, I love that because it shows that she is a nature figure and it represents the cycle of the year. You know, the Empress for me is the growth principle. You know, she's feminine creativity, she's fecundity, she's pregnancy, she's all of those things. Anything, growth, reproduction, multiplication, organic life, it's all there in her. So I wanted her in this almost Twilight Garden. I mean, when you look at it, I think she's at the foot of steps. Yeah, if you look closely, you can see, but it's all overgrown.
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted her in this rich twilight garden, but at the same time, we can't tell, is she moonlit? Is she sunlit?
Yeah.
It's half and half, because I mean the moon is implied in the spheres that I took from the Thoth, but then she's also backlit as well. So I love, one thing I do love is that time when you get sunlight on the horizon and the moon is still in the sky.
Yes.
You know, or when you get like, you know, the moon is right high in the sky, but during the day.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I wanted to evoke with her, because I mean, she is day and night. You know, she's everything. So yeah, and again, you can see there are waterfalls here as well, which you see on a lot of. The theme continues. You kind of see there's a watery quality on the Thoth card, even though obviously she represents the element of earth. You know, earth is nourished by water. And again, on the Waite Smith Empress, you see a waterfall behind the throne. So that to me, there's that close relationship between earth being nourished by water. So yeah, she's not quite the sort of fecund goddess of the Waite Smith. You know, she's not, you know, sitting on her throne resplendently pregnant. She is kind of a little bit more aloof, like the Marseille Empress, but at the same time, you've got all that growth possibility is in there. So yeah,
I love that card.
There she is.
Thank you, that's brilliant. And that takes us on to our fourth one,
the Emperor.
The Emperor. Talk to us a little bit then about the colour on this one.
Yeah, this was a challenging one, because of course, you know, you're into the realm of fire.
Yeah.
But with working with silhouettes, I thought I needed something to contrast.
Yeah.
And I've used deep purple.
Yeah.
Because purple for me is a very regal authority colour.
Yeah.
So all of my shadow colours in this are purple, but they're sort of grading through into fiery oranges, reds and yellows. So it's paying homage to the fire element of the Emperor, but at the same time, the sort of authority element of the Emperor as well is there in the colour. So with this one, I mean, it's the complete opposite of the Empress. I mean, she's in a rich, verdant garden, twilight garden, whereas he is in this completely man-made space. And that, to me, I wanted to show the difference between the sort of masculine and feminine principles within the major arcana for me, because, you know, you see both the Empress and the High Priestess in these very natural settings. You know, the High Priestess is, you know, between two waterfalls, you know, looking out onto a lake, you know, with mountains beyond. The Empress in the garden, whereas he is in a city.
Yeah.
You know, you can see this is all buildings, columns, pillars. It's a man-made structure, but the Emperor for me, whereas the Empress is matter, and she is the sort of, you know, life and the raw material to be shaped. The Emperor is the shaping principle.
Yeah.
You know, the Emperor takes matter and organises it and structures it.
Yeah.
So,
and you've got the shield here that he's holding out.
It's holding out, yeah. Again, that's not something that was thought out a great deal. I just felt this sense of him almost holding his shield out with the eagle, and it's kind of almost like a proclamation of authority. Yeah. You know, proclamation of, you know, sort of divinely appointed authority.
I have to say, I've noticed the theme is that the characters so far are all reaching out, aren't they? Which is
I suppose they are. Yeah, I haven't thought of that, but they are. The priestess is reaching out to the sphere. Yeah. You know, the Empress is, again, holding the shield and the Venus symbol out. He is reaching out, and, you know, there's a message in this shield. It's the symbolism of it. Yeah. It's also saying, don't mess with me. You know, but he's holding the sceptre and orb in the other hand. So on both the Thoth and the Waite Smith, you know, you see the sign of the ram. Yeah. Usually on the throne. So I've put the ram in here for Aries, for, you know, just to show that is almost like the Emperor's spirit animal, an astrological sign. Again, this is a fiery environment. You know, this is not an earth environment, but then traditionally the Emperor is a fire card.
And tell us about the mandala, the way you've placed it in this one, the emphasis.
This one is, it's kind of, again, the sunrise or whatever is contained within it, or the blaze of fire. But it actually, the mandala sits just above his whole kingdom.
Yeah.
When you actually look at this, you get a sense that the mandala is on the horizon.
Yeah.
And that it basically encompasses the whole of his realm.
Yeah.
Now, for me, if this guy is, if we're encountering him in his positive and benevolent aspect, he will structure and create his society to promote healing, well-being, and wellness. You know, and prosperity. Yeah. You know, benevolent rulers create space where people can thrive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tyrannical rulers create destructive space.
Yeah.
So I wanted a mandala over the whole kingdom to show that actually, if you use, you know, if you use reversals, if this turns up upright, you know, it shows that you are in a kingdom where individuals can flourish. Turn it upside down, you know, the mandala healing space is oppressed by the actual physical, artificially constructed world. So that's interesting. I didn't think too much about that at the time. No. That was something that kind of came to me later, but there was a sense that it just had to, the light had to be just spreading out over the whole city. You know, and he's almost, again, I mean, he's almost like a gatekeeper. It's like, welcome to my kingdom. You know.
And it's interesting that some of this I think you've done it subconsciously, whereas a lot of it you've done consciously.
Some of it's subconscious, some of it is conscious.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Which then takes us on to the Hierophant.
No, this was a difficult card to do.
Oh, tell us more. What did you struggle with on this one?
I always struggle with this card because I've just got such mixed feelings about him, and I think a lot of people do. You know, I come out of a religious background. You know what I've told you in my story so far. Me and organised religion don't mix, do they? So, of course, I've got this problem, but also I've realised that my problem is not with him; it's with him. And actually, I started to really come to terms with that when I was creating this card, and that's why it felt difficult.
It was kind of a healing process then, doing this.
It was,
deck as well as for yourself, as you
yeah,
know, which
because
is
I think any kind of process where you're creating a tarot deck, I don't think you can help but be healed by these archetypes.
You kind of process your own thoughts and feelings, don't you?
The tarot images for me, tarot archetypes, are, each one is a reflection of an aspect of human experience, of the principles behind of the principles of creation, the laws that govern the way our world, our world ticks. And the Hierophant, we've looked at the High Priestess as the archetype of feminine spirituality. He's the archetype of masculine spirituality. The Empress, the archetype of feminine rule and authority. The benevolent mother, the Gaia, the Earth Mother. Fecundity, creativity. The Emperor as the masculine archetype of authority and that shaping, structuring principle. So the Hierophant, in a way, takes the raw spiritual intuitions of the High Priestess and codifies them. So, you think of any great religious text, in inverted, the Bible, the Quran, any of the Hindu sacred texts, they're codifications of religious tradition. They're codifications that are handed down from generation to generation, that preserve tradition. And that's his job. He preserves tradition. So he's an archetypal teacher. He's the archetypal spiritual teacher. He's the archetypal guide. But he's also the archetype of spiritual authority. He will make pronouncements on what is right and wrong, what is heretical, what is canonical, which makes him potentially an uncomfortable figure. So there's a lot of traditional Marseille stuff going on in here. Like, I mean, in a way that you see in the Waitsmith. I didn't follow the Thoth on this because what I wanted to say was kind of, you know, my take on this card is very much, you know, within the sort of, you know, the tradition of the Marseille and the Waitsmith. But you can see he's got the sort of 3-tiered papal crown, the, you know, the papal cross, and also at the foot.
I always wanted to ask about the symbols as well that you've got here.
On the pillars.
On the pillars, and the fact that he's going to one. He's pointing to one, isn't he?
He's not necessarily pointing to one.
He's going that way, isn't he?
His hand is outstretched as an invitation. Now, whereas the priestess's pillars are a gateway into the unknown, the pillars here are the gateway into the, you know, a sort of known codified world. Basically, he's saying, you know, you step into this world, you step into my tradition, you step into our traditions. You know, you step into the revealed world of God, as our tradition has revealed it, the revealed world of the divine. So I've picked up on a little something that I noticed on the Waitsmith, which I hadn't really thought about before. And again, it's a recurrence of the common theme that runs through the Waitsmith of roses and lilies, so passion and purity. And it was when I was doing this deck, I finally noticed that one of the acolytes has roses on his robe, the other one has lilies. And it's that twin theme of passion and purity that clash and complement. You know, religion demands purity, but it also demands the passion and fervour of devotion. So I wanted a fleur-de-lis for the lily of purity and the rose of passion on the other pillar. So, and again, you've got your two acolytes, you know, two priests, you know, under the authority of the Pope, the Hierophant, because of course in the Marseille decks this was the Pope. So yeah, he's at the gateway. His arm is outstretched as an invitation, but it's you know it's for very much that you step into that world of, you know, of known tradition. Codified tradition, codified knowledge, and he will teach you, he will guide you.
Tell us the position of the mandorla in this one then, because it's positioned on his head, isn't it?
It's positioned on his head, but actually here, you can see that the gateway, the mandorla is beyond the gateway. Now, I've deliberately put him in front of the mandorla to show that he is directly inviting you onto that path that will lead you through the mandorla. Now, the idea is that if you follow that path, you step through the pillars into that temple of tradition, and you will eventually, the goal of your journey is to walk through that mandorla into spiritual fulfillment. So that's why it's there. It's directly between the two pillars, and he's almost like, like the High Priestess, he's the gatekeeper, but in a different way. It's a difficult card, because you turn him upside down, and of course, just as the Empress and the Emperor can become, you know, authority tyrants, this guy can become a spiritual tyrant, I suppose, as can the High Priestess, in a different way. You know, spiritual authority can be abused hideously, and I think the Hierophant probably in reverse is the the biggest example of that. So I find him a bit of a scary figure because it's because not the experiences because of my past experiences. He's not a comfortable figure, and I find him difficult to interpret sometimes in readings because there is also the aspect of he is an archetypal teacher in general. So you can also interpret him from that non-spiritual sense, but yeah, it's colour-wise. Red and gold. I'm not quite sure why. It just felt right.
It complements it though, I think. I do like the colours on this one.
Yeah, and I think because of the red robes that you see on the Waitsmith, that was kind of, and I suppose I didn't realise, of course, there's red and gold there. It's something again I did intuitively, isn't it?
Yeah. We've seen this a lot, haven't we? Actually, through the cards we've looked at.
Yeah.
Don't realise you're doing it, and you're doing it exactly
more than I realised at the time. So yeah. So that's the Hierophant. So
okay, next up we have the Lovers.
Oh no.
So tell us.
I like this. This is more straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay, I've not gone for the kind of deep religious symbolism that you see in the Wade Smith, because obviously that, you've got, it's an amazing iconic illustration of Adam and Eve with the trees of life and, and knowledge and, the angel, the angel in the clouds, which is wonderful. But I kind of wanted to go back to those really early lovers cards.
Yeah.
Even before the Marseille decks. I mean, with the Marseille cards, you see a man choosing between two figures.
Like choices.
Choices. Whereas you go back to earlier decks, say like the Italian Visconti decks, and you will literally see a man and a woman and Cupid.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to show here. But also the mandorla on this, they are as a couple, they are framed within the mandorla because their connection itself is the healing.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? That's something that's so universal to all of us. We all find healing, we all find completion through connection.
Yeah.
And the lovers, for me, more than anything else, is the connection principle.
Yeah.
So, of course, Cupid firing the arrow.
Yeah.
But again, it's like the Empress in that I kind of wanted to create a sense of a secret garden.
Yeah.
That is their space. It's one of the reasons I didn't want anything else on there. Yeah. It's their space and their space alone.
Yeah.
It's secret space.
Yeah.
It's space that only they experience.
Yeah. And I love the silhouette on this one. The way it seems quite, I don't know, it seems really good with this one because of it's kind of in the shadows.
It's in the shadows, and again, it speaks of intimacy.
Yeah.
The kind of really deep connection
that
we forge as lovers is in an intimate space.
Yeah.
So again, the fact that this is a dark image, it's dark in the sense that it's concealing. It's not dark in the sense that there is anything sinister but I wanted that secret, intimate space. Pink is a delicate colour of passion. Gold for me is a colour of divinity. And I wanted that golden divine light, but in that sort of sensual pink space. And I mean, this is a traditional heterosexual lovers card, but for me, whether you are gay, straight, genderqueer, trans, whatever, just the symbol of the couple is universal for me. So even though I set out wanting to do something very simple, I did that because for me that simplicity holds so many truths. And I think, if I do another lovers card, I can do the other stuff some other time, but this for me is about connection, and connection also engenders choice.
Absolutely.
So it's the archetype of connection, the archetype of choice. Their relationship is the healing space of the mandorla itself.
I love that. It's a really nice card, that is. So finally,
final one of this round,
the Chariot.
The Chariot. Oh, she was
Tell us about this one, because I found this really interesting. Because who is this then?
That's Boadicea from Hyde Park.
That is. And tell us why you chose her.
Right.
Because it's really interesting.
I finally got to do this card satisfactorily after, where are we? This was done in 2015. After 12 years. Because I designed my first deck 12 years earlier in 2003. And at the time, I put Boadicea from Hyde Park on that. But it just, I'd only just started learning Photoshop. I couldn't do it justice. So I thought, right, we're going there this time. And I love this statue. The reason it's her specifically is because I love the very earliest decks, the big sort of hand-painted Italian Visconti decks. I love the fact that the charioteer was female. Because I think what gets missed with the tarot so much is, now we take it for granted, but, tarot originally was really subversive. The Fool was a subversive figure, and a figure actually poking fun at authority. The Popess was a piece of heresy, sticking two fingers up at the church. The Empress, again, what most people don't think, we come out of a European Greco-Roman tradition. There is no room for an empress in that. Rome or Greece did not have empresses.
No.
So that's a constructed figure, and that was sticking two fingers up at male authority. And you can see why the church and authority hated the tarot. And why it was branded a cult, because actually it was saying up the patriarchy.
Yeah.
You know,
It's interesting.
but equally, here's our amazing charioteer, and she's female.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's some wonderful modern renditions, but I wanted a woman on that chariot.
Yeah.
And you said about the mandorla on this, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Because it fascinated you.
Yeah.
The mandorla centers on the top of her spear, and I've kind of, the top of her spear is glowing. So she is actually a very fearsome figure. One of the things I love about this statue is that it denotes really swift movement. And I love the fact that she is totally and supremely in control, because the chariot is the archetype of mastery and control, and she has to actually tame those two horses to bring them into unison, so that they are both going in the direction that she wants them to go in, not the direction that they want to go in. And of course, she's riding to war, and she is proudly holding that spear aloft. And I just sensed that the tip of that spear, that weapon, that was the healing.
I love that. And the use of light as well, that you've got going down onto...
I wanted a real starburst from that spear tip, because that spear is her empowerment. And also, again, it's another 2 fingers up at the patriarchy, because I mean, there's nothing more phallic than the spear. You know, and it's saying, gents, the ladies can do it just as well. Thank you very much. You know, and she, again, it's that statue of Boadicea. It's that whole tradition of the warrior queen, authority, mastery, control. You know, it's very, very powerful. And again, the early chariot cards showed a woman. They showed.
Yeah, you said this, didn't you? Because I didn't know that, and we were looking at them. So it's interesting.
So that's why it had to be Boadicea. I lived in London for 13 years. I loved that statue. So that's why. I did make one attempt with my first deck, but I just didn't get it. Whereas this got it right. And thankfully, when Lo Scarabeo, my lovely publishers, came to actually do this, they chose Boadicea to go on the box. So we've got the Queen of Wands on one side and Boadicea on the other, and you think, that kind of sums it up. So we have just finished the first row. That's not bad, is it?
That was brilliant. And thank you, Chris, because that gives not just me, but I'm sure a lot of people watching this, a lot of insight into, you know, the symbolism and the inspiration behind a lot of the cards, and having explained it from your point of view, it was very interesting.
I'm glad.
So thank you.
So we're going to do the next lot soon.
Part 2.
So for anyone who's watching, thanks for joining us. The next time we do this, we're going to go on to actually, are we doing? No, we're not. We're going to do some pentacles, aren't we?
Yes, we'll do that next one, aren't we?
Yeah, we will. What we're going to do is we're going to do the majors in 3 parts, and we're going to intersperse them with our exploration of the suits. So next time round, we will be looking at the first 7 cards in the suit of pentacles. So hopefully you'll join us, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I've certainly enjoyed sharing this with Ben. So
I've enjoyed your explanation, so thank you.
So hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Bye.